The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Integrated Communications and Marketing Agency Request for Qualifications. Please note that this webinar will be recorded, and there's a little bit of a delay with the slides, so just FYI. So some house rules and reminders. This webinar, as I said, will be recorded. The recording will be posted on our funding center where this RFQ is posted. All callers will remain muted throughout this presentation. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we will address the questions. As far as questions, so that's the muted button. But there should be a questions box in your system. Please submit all questions through the question panel throughout the presentation. We are constantly monitoring just the questions we receive, so we will know when we receive your question. And please do not use the raise your hand button. Submit your questions through the question inbox. But I know I just said don't use it, but before we begin, I want to do a technology check-in. So please raise your hands to see if you can hear me clearly. I see hands, so yep, we're good. We're going to move forward. So welcome. We're going to do brief introductions, but hi, my name is Daisy Ortiz. I'm the Contract Compliance Officer for this project. And with me, I have Gabriel Sanchez, who is the Director of the Communications Department, as well as Marlene Fitzsimmons, who's the Manager of Strategic Initiatives. So I think our team is here and they will say a brief hello.
Hello there, this is Gabriel. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Marlene.
Okay, so we will move on to today's agenda. So our agenda is very jam-packed, but we will first discuss about First 5 LA. We will provide an overview of this project. We will discuss eligibility and desired qualifications. Then we will walk through the required documents. Lastly, we will discuss the timeline, and then the last portion of this session is the Q&A. Where we will address your questions. Please note that we will try to answer as many questions as we can during our time together, but if there are questions that we do not get to, we will be providing responses in written form and posting them on our funding page for this project. So about First 5 LA. For those who are not familiar with us as an organization, First 5 LA is a public agency that was established in 1998 following the passage of Proposition 10 by California voters, which is the state tax on cigarettes. We are a funder, collaborator, advocate focused on supporting children prenatal through age 5. We prioritize this age as it is a critical window of time given that 90% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 5. First 5 LA recently has recently adopted a refined strategic plan for the years of 2020 through 2028, which articulates our North Star, which is that by 2028, all children in Los Angeles County will enter kindergarten ready to succeed in school and life. The new plan will help guide and accelerate all that First 5 LA does to make a tangible difference in the lives of children today and tomorrow. So To reach that North Star, First 5 LA wants systems to work better for all families in LA County by making them more family-centered and child-focused, with a focus on 4 result areas that include families optimize their child's development, children receive early developmental supports and services, children are safe from abuse, neglect, and other trauma, and children have high quality early care and education experiences. A little bit more about us. We have on the slide before you, we have identified our values that act as guiding principles for how we do our work, the culture we aim to promote, and as a benchmark to measure behaviors and performance. Additionally, we have investment guidelines that serve as a criteria for decision making for all major components of our strategic planning process and as an ongoing policy guidance for board and staff during the implementation of our strategic plan. And together, the investment guidelines represent a 6-part identity statement for First 5 LA that explicitly prioritizes adopting an equity lens through our work and addresses the critical challenges of a declining First 5 revenue. For more information on First 5 LA strategic plan, please see Appendix A for this solicitation. And now that we've given you a very brief overview of First 5 LA, my colleague Gabriel will provide us with background on some of our efforts and the use of communication as a key strategy to achieve our outcomes. Gabriel?
Sorry about that, I was muted. Thank you, Daisy. I want to talk a little bit about how we want to use communications. And that is, First 5 LA seeks to use communications and marketing strategies to help educate and raise awareness of the importance of early childhood development to a variety of audiences in order to drive the change of norms, attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs so young children are prioritized in policy and budget decisions. We also want to use communications as a vehicle to help create lasting, equitable changes to policies, programs, and systems of care, such as early education and healthcare, so they work better to address the needs of children and their families. Next slide, please. So our communications department is, excuse me a second there. Our communications department is using the following strategies to contribute to the advancement of the 2020-2028 strategic plan. We want to build the agency's brand or continue building the agency's brand as an advocate, partner, funder, convener, and an expert source. That includes to policymakers, decision makers, as well as to parents and caregivers. We want to engage, educate, and influence decision makers, including but not limited to state policymakers, local elected officials like city council members, mayors, other leaders of agencies at the city or municipal level, county agencies, community leaders, business leaders, and leaders at higher education institutions. We also want to use communications to elevate awareness of the importance of early childhood development. We want to create urgency to address issues and improve conditions that impact young children and their families. And we also, as one of our strategies, we want to drive internal communications to help advance our agency's goals. Next slide, please. So what I want to talk a bit about is our lobbying and advocacy guidelines. And that is, as an independent government agency, we're a county level commission, and steward of public funds, First 5 LA is legally allowed to participate in advocacy and lobbying activities at the local, by that we mean school districts, city and county level, state and federal levels of government, inclusive of administrative, executive, and legislative bodies. That's per California Government Code Section 5023. However, First 5 LA cannot take any action to ask, persuade, encourage, or elevate to others, that is public or grantees, the opportunity to take any action on a new or existing public policy proposal or policy recommendation, And by that we mean motions, resolutions, bills, regulations, budget proposals, etc. That would be considered grassroots lobbying and is prohibited. An example of this may be we cannot urge members of the public to call a member or of the state legislature or federal government to pass a bill. We cannot do that. However, we can have meetings where we might have conversations, in smaller private meetings with office holders, but we cannot ask the public to lobby in such a way. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Marlene to discuss the project overview.
Thank you, Gabriel. So we will give you an overview of the project that's outlined within the solicitation. Next slide, please. So First 5LA is seeking one agency to help build engagement, trust, and advocacy through strategic, just lost the screen here for a minute, strategic integrated communications and marketing. This includes development of data-driven, research-based creative concepts to maximize reach and engagement of target audiences and builds upon current and future public will building and behavior change campaigns and initiatives. The selected contractor must be able to provide strong earned media relations and public relations strategic insight and message development to reach target audiences, which are currently identified as California and LA County policy decision makers, parents and caregivers, the general public, community members, and partners. Additionally, the selected contractor should have knowledge and experience in internal communication strategies. That includes methods and processes for internal staff information sharing as well as engagement, and have the capacity to design and lead media interview training sessions for First 5LA executive team and staff. The selected contractor must also be able to work holistically with other First 5LA agency partners and consultants to execute events, social media campaigns, creative campaigns, as well as other marketing projects. Success is expected to be measured by reporting metrics. This includes but is not limited to the following KPI or key performance indicators. Story placements, which includes quality of coverage, sentiment, and tone, earned traffic to the First 5LA website, site visits and downloads of materials and resources, message resonance, target audiences, etc. So these KPIs will be determined upon negotiation of the scope of work with the selected contractor. The goal is to design insightful, integrated communication and marketing campaigns that inform, educate, and encourage target audiences to become champions for young children and their families, and influences changes in behavior and beliefs. Additionally, the selected agency should also have knowledge and familiarity of the California and LA County political, demographic, ethnic, and cultural landscape. So now we will dive into the scope of work. So as outlined in the solicitation, we have divided the scope of work into the following sections. Planning. So we define planning as designing comprehensive, strategic, integrated communications and marketing plans to build engagement, trust, and advocacy for First 5LA's 4 results areas and reach target audiences. This also includes research, design and leading research projects that may include, but are not limited to, concept testing, market research, surveys, and focus groups that will inform marketing campaigns and initiatives. Media article monitoring. This is a monitoring of news coverage of early childhood development topics across print, online, social media, and broadcast platforms to support the development of curated newsletters, to help inform media relations strategy, and to identify topical and timely storytelling opportunities. Paid advertising media planning. This requires planning of buying strategies in support of marketing campaigns. Develop unique campaigns to increase awareness, consideration, and conversion of target audiences through traditional paid advertising, media planning, and buying, which includes but is not limited to out of home. Examples of this include billboards, transit, and other type of outdoor advertising, as well as print, TV, radio advertising, as well as digital advertisement. Next slide, please. Thanks. Development. So the development of public awareness and advocacy campaigns includes coverage of topics will vary, but will complement the outcome areas of the strategic plan discussed under the above section 2 in the background. And it will focus on public will building and behavior change. These public will building campaigns will target LA County's diverse population of parents and caregivers of children prenatal to age 5, as well as the general public and target stakeholder audiences across California. For message development, develop messaging and talking points to reach target audiences, which are currently identified as California and LA County policy decision makers, parents and caregivers, the general public, community members, and partners. For earned media relations and storytelling, we are seeking a contractor to propose and implement a regional LA County, Southern California, and statewide media relations strategy that elevates First 5LA's brand and the urgency of the identified outcome areas to reach target audiences and to build public will in support of First 5LA's early childhood priorities. This also includes proactively identifying opportunities for media coverage, both locally and regionally, as well as monitoring and reporting on to generate results. Continuation of development, opinion editorials. So working in partnership with First 5LA staff to develop opinion editorial articles that elevate First 5LA's brand and the urgency of the identified outcome areas to reach and influence target audiences such as policy and practice leaders. Crisis communication support includes preparing, plan, and develop strategic, proactive, and reactive strategies, messaging and events for crisis or emergency, including but not limited to natural disasters, a major crime event, or greater issues of public health and safety. Further crisis-specific initiatives may occur and will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Execution and evaluation. Evaluation and measurement of impact. This includes delivery of reports that detail campaign performance, provide analytics and insights based on mutually determined key performance indicators, and provide results-driven recommendations. For internal communication strategies, apply proven methods and develop processes for internal staff information sharing and engagement. So a preface for collaboration. The selected contractors and proposed contractors, if any, will work in collaboration with First 5LA staff, along with First 5LA's Agency for Social Media and Digital Marketing, our Agency for Multimedia Creative Services, and the Agency for Event Production to develop and execute integrated communications and marketing strategies. So this includes a scope of work under collaboration. Multilingual content development. Create content and manage translation of materials, including but not limited to campaign messaging, flyers, fact sheets, etc., in the top 4 languages spoken in the county, which include English, Spanish, Chinese, and Tagalog, while also respecting cultural differences. This may be done in partnership with First 5LA's social media and digital marketing agency partner. Advertising media strategy. Developing media strategies to increase awareness, consideration, and conversion of target audiences through traditional paid advertising, media planning, and buying, including but not limited to out-of-home, billboards, transit, etc., print, TV, radio advertising, as well as digital advertisement. Event support and logistics. Work collaboratively with other First 5LA agency partners and vendors to design, coordinate, and support events that may include, but are not limited to, press briefings, community convenings, summits, and conferences. This includes on-the-ground staffing support and may also include coordinating press interviews and support with event registration. And now I will turn it back over to Daisy to go over our terms of the project.
Thanks, Marlene. So this project, you can find the terms of the project on pages 10 to 11 of the RFQ, but the project is length is 4 years and 8 months. The total project amount is not to exceed $1,200,000 per year if renewed, and the total project cost is not to exceed $5,600,000. The total project cost here, it means it's inclusive of the 4 years and the 8 months. We are looking at an initial 8-month agreement for an amount not to exceed $800,000, and we anticipate starting on November 1st of this year. Contract renewals and annual budgets are subject to approval by First 5LA's boards of commissioners, and First 5LA does reserve the right to terminate the contract if services are no longer needed, or if the quality of product or level of service is not consistent with the original sample submission or to First 5LA's satisfaction. Next slide is, so these two slides are going to discuss the budget and format of the contract. So First 5LA will execute a blended retainer and task order contract. In the retainer payment structure, funds will be granted through monthly invoices based on incurred expenses from the retainer fee on a reimbursement basis, and the following scope of work activities will be included in the retainer payment structure. So this table is organized by category and the activities corresponding to that category. A portion of the contract amount will be issued via task order payment structure. And in the task order, First 5LA will issue task orders for project tasks with specified scope, schedule, and budget. Please know that these task orders are usually negotiated before the task commences. Invoices will be paid based upon the negotiated payment structure included in each of the task order. The task orders may be fixed price or time and material at the sole discretion of First 5LA, and the following scope of work activities will be included in the task order payment structure. So again, this is organized by category and then the corresponding scope of work activity. So now we're going to transition into eligibility requirements and desired qualifications. So I'm going to start with the eligibility requirements. The applicant must meet the following requirements presented on your screen. So the first one is must have a physical office in the County of Los Angeles. And the second eligibility requirement is key staff located in the County of Los Angeles with the capacity to work from First 5LA offices at least 2 days a week as requested by First 5LA. Please note that in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, First 5LA is operating as a remote organization with employees working remotely through December 31st, 2020. So in the online application, proposers will be asked these two questions. Please note that these requirements will be reviewed in the level 1 review, and proposers that do not meet this requirement will not advance to the next level of review, which is a review of the proposal. We will discuss those elements shortly, but I just wanted to point out that First 5LA does reserve the right to ask for additional documentation to verify the eligibility requirements, and it is First 5LA's intent to contract with independent contractors as defined by California's AB5 and not to create an employer-employee relationship. So Gabriel will now discuss the desired qualifications and experience. Gabriel?
I'm on mute again. Sorry about that, everybody. The ideal proposer will have the following experience and qualifications. And one moment, because somehow my screen got minimized here. It's a timeline. I'm sorry, I'm having some challenges here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, the ideal proposer will have the following experiences and qualifications. these are the first set will be industry-specific qualifications. By that we mean planning and implementing behavioral change, integrated communications marketing strategies, strategic integrated communications and marketing planning for nonprofit organizations and public agencies, strong earned media relations and public relations, strategic insight and message development to reach target audiences, knowledge and expertise in internal communication strategies that includes methods and processes for internal staff information sharing and engagement, the capacity to design and lead media interview training sessions, also utilizing a variety of emerging technologies and platforms, crisis communications consulting, planning and messaging, experience in planning and buying advertising media placements, ad buys, evaluating and assessing the effectiveness and reach of integrated communication campaigns and initiatives. Next slide, please. Next, I want to talk a bit about, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to hand this off to Marlene now. Pardon me.
No problem. Thanks, Gabriel. So continue with desired experience and qualifications. Under relationships, we define this criteria as cultivation and leveraging partnerships with organizations whose mission and values align with First 5LA. Secondly, already established relationship with subcontractors, if necessary for specialized projects. This may include research, concept testing, market research, media buying, etc. Already established relationships with advertising media outlets. So again, those relationships in regards to developing a strategy and placing media buys. Fostering collaborative relationships with clients, including clients' direct staff, grantees, consultants, partners, and influencers. Media training for diverse stakeholders as well as client staff. Under audience, we have the listed desired criteria as developing creative briefs, research and concept testing for diverse audiences, crafting earned media pitches, earned media pitch angles and storytelling content in a variety of styles for a diverse, multicultural, multilingual audience, integrating multiple platforms to reach and engage a mix of diverse, multicultural, and multilingual audiences, as well as knowledge and familiarity of the California and LA County political, demographic, ethnic, and cultural landscape. So I'll turn it back over to Daisy.
I didn't, I'm sorry. So for the required documents, I'm looking at pages 10 to 12 of the RFQ. And for selection process, I am looking at pages 9 to 10. So for the required documents to submit, this solicitation requires an online application, a narrative of qualifications and relevant experience, 2 work samples, proposed rates, and the litigation and contract compliance form, as well as a business license if applicable. So I'm going to talk a little more in depth about each one, but I wanted to elevate and notify you of Appendix E, which is an application checklist, which will help you ensure that you have provided a complete application. Please note that omission of any document or form may constitute an incomplete proposal and may be grounds for disqualification. So the first item is the online application. This is what it looks like in the solicitation, but please, the first link is instructions on setting up the account are on our funding page, and how to access the online application is the second link. Please note that there's multiple steps in how to submit our application, so I strongly recommend that you look at those instructions. So our application looks like this. This is the first thing you're going to see once you're in the application. As you can see, we have the 2 questions. Once you submit your response, and it will take you to this next page, which is more informational in nature. And I want to definitely discuss this next page because this is your attachment page. As you can see, each item has a a specific file name so that you can attach your documents. The work samples, you will be submitting them individually. So there's a tab for work sample number 1, and there's a tab for work sample number 2. Even though we've identified 6 items, because you're filling out the application, that's why it's not listed here, because you're in the application. The second item that we will be discussing is the narrative of qualifications and experience. Please note that this one, there are a few questions that we're asking you, but also there is a pagination limit of no more than 10 pages. If additional pages do get attached, they will be taken out before they are evaluated in the second level of review. The third required document is the 2 work samples. So using Appendix G for work sample submission, please provide us with 2 samples of no more than 5 pages each of the completed projects that demonstrate your agency's strategy, approach, experience, and expertise. Proposers must provide a brief description of the work sample, including the strategy and approach taken for said work sample. Identify the team members described in the narrative of qualifications and relevant experience, if any, that were involved in the creation of the work sample by name and their role in the creation of the work sample and the approved budget for the work sample. So what that looks like, also, this is just what Appendix G looks like and the instructions. What that looks like is this. So this is the work sample cover page, which gives you a space to add your brief description, as well as another space to add your team members, and then a final section to add your approved budget. So what you're ultimately submitting is a 5-page, up to 5-page work sample and this cover page. So that's one packet. For required document number 4, the proposed rates, if you look at Appendix H, we are providing you this document so that you use this document to submit your proposed monthly retainer as well as your proposed hourly rates. We strongly encourage you, if not require you, to use your Appendix H as the tool for submission. In the document itself, please list the scope of work activities under the retainer payment structure and for the hourly rates for key personnel that will be assessed for the first 5 LA. For the project-specific tasks, list each scope of work activity under the retainer payment structure. And then required document number 5 is the litigation and contract compliance form. Please read this form, answer the questions. I really want to point out that if you click yes to any of the questions on this form, please explain the circumstances for the response and explain, this is a 2-parter, explain whether this will impact the project on this solicitation. A mission of this, excuse me? A mission of this form will constitute an incomplete proposal and may be grounds for disqualification. All of the forms that we're asking for are important, but this one's like important point 1. So required document number 6 is the business license if applicable. So please submit your organization's business license if applicable. Applicability means if the city you are, where your office is located, if your city requires you to have a license to operate, odds are you are required to have a business license and therefore you should submit it. So for the selection process and review criteria, these are pages 9 and 10 of the solicitation. This is verbatim what's in the solicitation, except they're in like boxes. But First 5LA will review the proposers based on a multi-stage review process detailed below. Proposals must score satisfactorily in each of the levels of review as applicable. So the first level of review, First 5LA looks at the proposals for completeness and minimum requirements. Minimum requirements include timely receipt of the proposal, submission of all required documents, and adherence to the eligibility requirements as provided in Section 5 of eligibility. Like I said, proposals with omission of any required documents are subject to disqualification. First 5LA also conducts a due diligence review, which includes a review of the litigation and contract compliance form, a review of whether the proposer currently remains placed in a non-compliant status by First 5LA under any existing and or past agreement with First 5LA. First 5LA reserves the right to request additional information if needed to validate the eligibility and or minimum requirements. First 5LA also conducts a conflict of interest review for the proposers, including the subcontractors. For level 2, proposal review, proposals that pass the first level of review will proceed to the second level. The review panel, which will be comprised of First 5LA staff, they will, before they begin their review, these reviewers will be assessed for conflict of interest with the proposers, including the subcontractors, and will sign a conflict of interest form certifying that there are no conflicts of interest. Internal reviewers will score the proposers using the review tool listed in Appendix D in this solicitation, and they will participate in a calibration meeting before finalizing their scores. So you may be wondering, what does Appendix D look like? Like this. So I strongly encourage you to reference Appendix D proposal review tool to inform your responses, as this is how they will be evaluated and how this tool demonstrates how certain review criteria are weighed as part of your total score for level 2 proposal review. This solicitation has a level 3 interview, which highly scoring proposals from level 2 review will proceed to level 3. We do indicate that only key personnel on the proposal can participate in the interview, which can include the account director, supervisor and or executive, and creative lead, as well as potential core team members. Please review the tentative interview dates that are included in Section 1 of the timeline for selection process. These times are subject to change at First 5LA's sole discretion. The interviews will be held virtually as an online meeting or via telephone. The reviewers will be assessed for conflict of interest with proposers and sign a conflict of interest form to certify that there are no conflicts of interest. The reviewers will also participate in a calibration session prior to finalizing their scores, and First 5LA reserves the right to schedule additional interviews and or meetings, and further written material may be requested prior to or after the interview. We will also may conduct reference checks. These will be conducted after level 3 interview, and proposers may be asked to submit references for similar work. We would need a minimum of 2 current or former clients as required, and information obtained through the reference check will complement the results of level 3. First 5LA must be able to contact 2 references provided by the proposer, and if these 2 references cannot be reached, First 5LA may deem the proposer ineligible for this opportunity. So final decision of the award. Past and current performance under a first 5LA agreement will inform the final decision of the award. The highest scoring proposer from the combined score of level 2 internal review and level 3 interview in combination with information obtained through reference checks, if conducted, will be recommended to First 5LA's Board of Commissioners for award of the agreement. If only one proposer is selected to advance to level 3 interview, proposer must score a combined minimum of 75% after level 2 and level 3 in order to be recommended to First 5LA's Board of Commissioners for award of the agreement. Please note that negative responses to reference checks may affect the final decision of the award, regardless of a final combined score. So, application submission. All of this to say, failure to submit all required documents will constitute an incomplete proposal and may be grounds for disqualification. Proposers are responsible for any errors and omissions in their proposals and applications, and it is the responsibility of the proposer to ensure prior to submission that its proposal reflects the requirements of the solicitation. Proposals received after the deadline will not be considered. The deadline is September 14th, 2020, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Proposers should not wait to submit documents through the online application system minutes before closing. First 5LA will not be responsible for any delays proposers may encounter with the online application system due to multiple proposers uploading documents before closing. Basically, don't wait till the last minute. First 5LA shall not be liable for any costs incurred in connection with a proposer's preparation of a proposal in response to this RFQ. Any cover letters, resumes, curriculum vitae, including attached materials submitted in response to this RFQ shall become First 5LA's property and is subject to public disclosure. Addenda. Please check our Funding Center webpage regularly for updates and addenda. We have First 5LA has a right to amend the solicitation by written addendum, and First 5LA is only responsible for which is expressly stated in the solicitation documents and any other written addenda thereto. All addenda will be available through our online funding center. So if there's any updates to the solicitation, it will be issued as an addenda to the solicitation and will be posted on this solicitation's webpage. So finally, timeline. We are here. So the final day to submit questions and requests for additional information is September 1st. We will be posting responses to questions received in this info session, as well as through other channel or through email. We will be posting them on September 8th. Proposals are due September 14th. Please note that the interviews are currently scheduled to happen between October 6th through October 9th, and a contractor will be selected by October 24th. We anticipate going to the Board of Commissioners meeting on November 12th, and with a contract start date of November 15th. So we will place you on a brief hold right now, or I'm going to mute myself basically, while we review your questions to see what we can address during our time today. And any questions that are not responded to during today's webinar will be responded to in written form and will be posted on our funding site. As detailed in the RFQ, all questions should be submitted to the email you see on the screen above. And yeah, so I'm gonna go check the questions. And if you still have any questions, please submit them. We are still, we're taking questions. So the first question is availability of this presentation, as well as so the presentation deck, as well as the recording of this session, will be posted on our Funding Center page shortly after the conclusion of this meeting. Okay, so we have a question confirming that the scope does not include media planning and buying and is just media strategy, channel strategy. Does the budget of 1.2 million a year include media planning and buying? Gabriel will respond.
Thank you, Daisy. Yes, the scope of work does include media planning and buying. And to be clear, the budget for fiscal year 2021, which is the remainder of this fiscal year, is 800,000. Subsequent fiscal years, meaning from 21, 22, and so forth to the end of the contract term, will be at $1.2 million per year.
So the next question, oops, sorry. So the next question is confirming that each of the 6 RFP requirements should be submitted as separate attachments. So let me go back to that slide because yes, the short answer is yes. But I want to show you. So when you go into the attachment section of the online application, you will see a tab for the narrative of qualifications and relevant experience. There's a tab for work sample number 1 and work sample number 2. There's also a tab for proposed rates. There's also a tab for litigation and contract compliance form. These are all required documents. So if you don't add them, it won't let you proceed. The only item that is optional is the business license because, again, it's if applicable. So if it is applicable, add it. If it's not applicable to you, then don't add it. So I'm going to respond. I think I'm going to ask the next question is, the RFP indicated that First 5 LA currently works with separate social media and creative service agency. Can First 5 LA identify those agencies? I believe that was Gabriel.
Yeah, thank you. Make sure I'm not on mute. Thank you. We are currently in the process of procuring these services from different vendors. Pending board approval, we'll have these decided.
Okay. I'm going to mute myself to review another question we received. The next question is the 1.2 million annually intended to cover all creative development, research, creative production, media investment, as well as public relations? I believe Gabriel was going to answer that.
Thank you. The short answer is yes. And again, the reminder that the budget for fiscal year 2021, meaning the remainder of this fiscal year, is $800,000, and subsequent fiscal years will have a budget of $1.2 million per fiscal year.
Okay. The next question is, I think we may have already kind of answered this, but is the solicitation a new project or a renewal of existing project? Gabriel, that was you.
Yeah. Again, this is a request for qualifications for integrated and communication marketing services. So it's a qualification, not necessarily project-based. And projects will be discussed with the awarded contractor.
Okay. The next question is, do the budget numbers include the production of deliverables?
Yes.
Okay. So I think there was a question for me. I'm gonna find. So we received a question about our hourly rates available for public review. Let me go back to that slide. So any material that is submitted in response to the solicitation does become our property, but it is subject to public disclosure. So the short answer is yes. If it's information that's proprietary and confidential as legally defined, we would notify that agency before public disclosure, just to give them notice, like, hey, this is happening. And then it would be up to that agency's responsibility to take any action as needed, whether it's legal action or what have you. But that's what we currently have, or that's currently identified in the solicitation documents. If that was not the intent of if that was not what you were asking, I would recommend adding additional context to that question. Okay. So will you make a list? So one of the questions we received is, will you make a list of prime contractors bidding available for subs to contract? No. I believe one of the, and Marlene, if you could jump in for this one, but I think one of the slides identified that the contractors had to have their subcontractors identified.
That's correct. Yes, the proposer is including subcontractors to fulfill the scope of work within the RFQ. We ask that you provide us with those subcontractor names and the role that they'll be playing to fulfill the scope of work.
Yep. We're still reviewing questions. So one of the questions is this contract more heavily on comms or on advertising? Marlene, Gabriel?
Yeah, sorry, I can jump in with that. We would say it's heavily communications, but that advertising is a key component.
One of the questions is there an incumbent and how long have they been with First 5 LA? Marlene, would you like to answer that?
Sure, I can also take that. So Ogilvy Public Relations is currently our AOR and have been since I think for the past 5 years.
And we received another follow-up question saying regarding the media planning, does this budget include the cost of media, i.e. the ads themselves? Is that correct? Marlene?
Okay, I can jump in on this one too. Yes, so I think we answered this question a little earlier, but just to kind of restate it, the budget, the total budget amount includes all that is listed under the scope of work. So when it comes to placement of ads, that cost is included in that budget. So for the remainder of the 2021 fiscal year, it's 800,000, and then subsequent fiscal years for a total budget of 1.2 million.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Gabriel. Looks like
That's okay.
I muted you. So I had a question. In the narrative, they ask, so let me go to the narrative. In the narrative, the ask for the description of planning in 2A and 2B appears somewhat redundant, with the only difference of creative inclusion in the process. In 2A, can you advise what is the expectation to describe the planning between the subsections? So we have 2A, which explains the agency process for planning and implementing an integrated communications and marketing plan. And then 2B is more about talking about a narrative of your knowledge in relation to these categories. So I don't know if Marlene wants to discuss a little further in explaining the nuances between the two.
Daisy, can you remind me what question is this?
This is number 27.
Okay.
And actually, let's in the sake of time, I'm gonna move on to. Is there an opportunity for First 5 LA to get a budget increase above and beyond the 800,000 for 2020 and the 1.2 million in subsequent years?
So as far as the annual budget, the 800,000 for the fiscal year, that would have to be discussed under negotiations with the contractor who is awarded. But as of now, these budgets are kind of what you should be working with, as all encompassing of both the media planning, buying, as well as the advertisement placements, because I feel like that's been a question folks are asking for clarity on. So the dollar amounts that Daisy went through in the presentation are what you should be using as your framework for budget.
So one of the questions was the smallest font size for the 10 pages. We do actually reference or identify a font size in the solicitation. So I highly recommend that you look at that, because we do identify a font size.
And then Daisy, for the written, for the narrative question, I think it's question 27, we'd love to respond to that in the written FAQ that we'll be developing. So okay. I just want to make sure that whoever asked that question, we're going to take a look and respond to that. And the response will be included in the FAQ posted in our funding center by September 8th.
Okay, so we do have 1 minute to wrap up, but thank you, thank you for joining us on a Friday at 1 p.m. We appreciate it. This is not your only opportunity, though, to submit questions. Please, let me show you my screen again. Please send all questions to the email here. We will, like Marlene said, we will be responding to all of these questions in written form. Oh, Gabriel wants to answer one question really quickly. So you should be, it says you're self-muted. Okay.
There we go. Thank you very much, Susie. The question was, you mentioned that you were looking for independent contractors. Can you speak more about that preference? Thank you. Actually, I want to be clear. No, that's the preference of the proposer. It's up to the proposer if they wanted to choose different contractors, subcontractors. It's entirely up to them if they feel that will make their response to our requests for proposals or for qualifications more compelling. So this is not a preference on our part. It's something that just is, if you do choose to include any type of subcontractors or independent contractors, they just should be included in your response.
Okay, and with that, we are concluding our info session. Thank you for joining us. And like I said, we will be posting the recording of this session as well as the PowerPoint slides, and we will be publishing all questions received with answers. And you can still send questions my way up until the deadline. Marlene, Gabriel, do you want to say anything before we end the session?
I just want to say thank you everyone for participating. And again, I urge you to read and follow the directions.
And thank you. This is Marlene. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for your insightful questions. I also want to encourage you to send any questions that you may have about the solicitation to Daisy. So her email address is on the screen. She is your first point of contact regarding the solicitation. So she's an amazing resource. So I encourage you to reach out to her with any questions you may have. And thanks for your time. And I hope everyone has a nice weekend.
This session has concluded.